All right, everyone, welcome in. Ready to dive deep. Today, we're tackling the origins of humankind. But buckle up, because this isn't your typical evolutionary story. We're exploring the unique perspective laid out in the Urantia book.
And it gets interesting right off the bat, challenging the traditional narrative from the get-go.
We're talking shaking things up geographically, too, right? It's not the typical African savanna starting point we're used to, is it?
Not at all. The Urantia book takes us to a very different location, the Mesopotamian Peninsula, and the time frame, about a million years ago.
Mesopotamia. Wow, talk about a plot twist. Forget grasslands, think lush forests and rivers. That's a pretty dramatic shift in scenery for the dawn of humanity.
It is, and it hints at the core difference in this narrative. We're not talking about apes evolving on the plains. This story starts with ancient lemurs.
Lemurs. You mean those big-eyed primates, known for, well, being a bit mischievous. Those are our distant relatives.
That's what the Urantia book suggests. Distant, yes, but relatives nonetheless. Now, to be clear, we're not talking about today's lemurs exactly. This was a specific type that migrated from North America across the Bering Land Bridge millions of years ago.
So picture these ancient lemurs, our distant relatives, end up in this lush Mesopotamian environment. What happens next? How do they go from lemur life to, well, us?
Get ready for some serious transformations. And I'm not just talking about a little change in appearance here and there. This is about massive shifts over countless generations, their bodies, their diets, even their ability to feel and understand emotions.
All right, give us the rundown. What were some of the biggest changes these early ancestors went through?
Well, for starters, they got bigger, like a lot bigger. Over time, they evolved to be much larger and stronger, adapting to their surroundings.
So from pocket-sized primates to something a bit more, well, imposing. But size isn't everything. What about brain power? Were they getting smarter along the way?
Oh, absolutely. The Urantia book is clear about that their brains were getting bigger, but it's the emotional development that's really interesting. They started experiencing a much wider range of emotions. Fear, loyalty, even a sense of shame.
It's like we're witnessing the very first sparks of human consciousness, those emotions that would shape our relationships, our societies, everything.
Exactly. And amid all these changes, physical and emotional, they underwent another major shift. Their diet.
Hold on. From fruit-loving lemurs to, what, carnivores? That's a big dietary jump. What prompted that change?
It wasn't overnight, of course. Think gradual adaptation over time, driven by their environment. As their intelligence increased, so did their ability to cooperate and strategize. They became hunters, working together, and that change in diet, that shift to meat, gave them the calories and nutrients their evolving bodies and brains needed.
So it's more than just the food itself. It's what it represents: growing intelligence, cooperation, problem solving. They were becoming more resourceful, adaptable, dare I say more human-like.
Exactly. And it's in this whirlwind of change, physical and mental, that we meet the next players in the story of us, the dawn mammals.
Okay, now I'm interested. What were these dawn mammals like?
Imagine this. Creatures about 3 feet tall, covered in hair, but moving with a new agility. They weren't walking upright all the time yet, but they could easily stand on their hind legs when they needed to. And get this, the Urantia book describes them as super social, constantly chattering amongst themselves.
Chatty, agile, and on their way to walking upright. Sounds like they were quite a sight. But aside from the evolving social scene, what really set them apart from their lemur ancestors?
2 words, opposable thumbs. The dawn mammals had developed a primitive version, and that was a game changer.
The opposable thumb, arguably one of the most important developments in human history. Tool use, intricate manipulation, scrolling endless feeds on our phones.
And here's another fun fact from the Urantia book. They also had a grasping big toe.
Wait, they could pick things up with their feet?
Yep. It was a trait that would disappear in humans later on, but stick around in other primates.
It's wild how even those seemingly small details, like a grasping toe, tell us so much about evolution and how interconnected life on Earth really is. But back to those thumbs. That newfound dexterity must have played a role in their evolving intelligence.
Without a doubt. The dawn mammals, according to the Urantia book, had the largest brains for their body size of any creature up to that point. They were incredibly curious, always exploring. That constant interaction, that drive to figure things out, really fueled their brain power.
They were the original tool users. Well, early versions anyway. What kind of tools? Spears, elaborate shelters?
The Urantia book doesn't go into specifics about their tools, but it does say they were pretty innovative for their time. Fear was a big motivator, and the book suggests this is where humans' tendency towards fear comes from. They looked for safety in the trees, building elevated shelters to avoid predators.
So fear, while not so fun, was essential for their survival. And they weren't just reacting to their environment, they were actively shaping it. But there was another side to this new intelligence too, wasn't there? Something about conflict between tribes.
Yes, alongside their smarts and resourcefulness, these dawn mammals were fiercely territorial. The Urantia book describes them as quick to defend what was theirs, often clashing with other tribes over resources and territory.
The classic struggle for survival, right? Competition drives innovation, but it can also get messy. So we've got these brainy ancestors battling it out for dominance. What happened? Who came out on top in these prehistoric turf wars?
Well, it wasn't just a battle, it was a war that lasted generations. And that struggle had a huge impact on the next chapter of human evolution. But that, my friend, is the story for next time.
You know how to keep us on the edge of our seats. Don't miss the next part of our evolutionary adventure coming up next time. Last time we left off with those fascinating dawn mammals. Intelligent, social, even a bit territorial. They were really starting to get the hang of this whole survival thing, but as we know, evolution rarely follows a straight line.
You're telling me it's a winding road full of surprises. And the Urantia book really drives that point home with a fascinating story about, well, twins. Twins that would change the course of human evolution.
Twins. You know, now that you mention it, I do recall some serious twin drama from the last chapter. What's so significant about this double arrival?
Okay, so picture this. A tribe of these advanced dawn mammals, and boom, a set of twins is born. One male, one female. But these weren't your typical dawn mammal babies. The Urantia book makes it clear that these two were different even as newborns.
So less Dawn of the Dawn mammals and more like Dawn of the Different. They stood out right from the start.
Exactly. They were bigger than their parents and siblings, longer legs, shorter arms, built to walk upright.
Wait, they just popped out walking on two legs. No awkward wobbling around. That's incredible. Did they come with, like, a user manual for bipedalism too?
Not quite a user manual, but the Urantia book suggests that standing upright was just natural for them, instinctive, a trait that set them apart from the very beginning. And it wasn't just how they walked. Their hands were different too. Their thumbs were even better suited for detailed work.
So they were built for walking and getting a grip on tool use in a way that must have seemed light years ahead at the time. What kind of impact did these differences have as they grew up?
Their brains, though still smaller than modern humans, were significantly more complex. And here's where it gets really interesting. These twins, their intelligence, it just blew everyone else out of the water, even the smartest members of their tribe.
Imagine being so intelligent that you're practically a different species. They must have felt worlds apart. Did that lead to any tension, any conflict within the tribe?
Actually, the Urantia book portrays them as leaders. They use their intelligence to come up with innovations, early forms of social organization, a basic division of labor. They even had 21 children, passing all those advanced traits down to the next generation.
21 kids, that's a lot of babysitting, even with help. But seriously, talk about a legacy. Their genes were basically giving the next generation of dawn mammals a supercharge. Did this lead to a new, more peaceful era?
At first, yes. Their leadership brought a period of stability and advancement. But as their descendants, who the book calls mid-mammals, grew in number, resources became more and more scarce.
The classic dilemma: more mouths to feed, less to go around. And while that competition can drive innovation, it can also lead to, well, less peaceful solutions.
Exactly. The Urantia book doesn't sugarcoat things. Even with all their intelligence, the mid-mammals were still driven by those deep primal instincts. Survival was paramount, and as the competition for food and mates intensified, conflict was inevitable.
So we've got this clash of old and new original dawn mammals versus the descendants of those super intelligent twins who came out on top in this prehistoric showdown.
This wasn't just a battle, it was an all-out war that raged for generations. And according to the Urantia book, the victors were those who had inherited those advanced traits, the mid-mammals.
A victory for the future, but not without a cost. It's a stark reminder that evolution, well, it can be brutal. But from those ashes, a new era began. Tell us more about these triumphant mid-mammals.
Picture this. Even taller, some over 5 feet, even less body hair. And remember that grasping big toe? Gone, replaced by feet that were better for walking, for running. Oh, and they were still comfortable in the trees. Often sought refuge there, but they climbed differently. More like humans do, using their legs for power.
Okay, they're looking more and more human-like. What about their behavior? Were they still chattering away up in the trees, or had their communication evolved too?
The Urantia book describes them as incredibly social, capable of much more complex communication. Their intelligence was always increasing, and they were remarkably adaptable, building elaborate shelters in trees and even underground.
The original multitaskers. Building up, digging down, they weren't messing around. It seems like they had this incredible drive to not just survive, but to really thrive, to innovate. What other fascinating things were they doing with those big brains?
Well, for one, they loved collecting things. Food, interesting stones, anything that caught their eye. The Urantia book calls this a hoarding instinct, and it suggests they were developing a greater awareness of the future, a desire to plan and prepare for what might come next.
Planning ahead. Wow, that's huge. It implies a sense of time that goes beyond the here and now. It's like they were starting to grasp the concept of consequences, of cause and effect.
And with that understanding comes a whole new level of complexity in their emotions. The Urantia book suggests that the mid-mammals were the first to show a sense of disgust, a sign of a developing sense of self, their place in their social structure.
So they're walking upright, building shelters, collecting shiny objects, and maybe even wrinkling their noses at a bad smell. They sound more and more human with every step. But I know there's more to the story. What's next in this evolutionary saga?
Well, get ready for another twist, because the Urantia book throws us a curveball. Remember those twin births we talked about earlier? It turns out there was another set, born to the mid-mammals. But their fate was very, very different.
Oh, now this is getting good. Two sets of twins, each shaping human evolution in their own way. What happened to the second set? Were they as groundbreaking as the first?
These twins were also more advanced than their peers, but the Urantia book paints a picture of a gentler nature, less driven to dominate. They didn't have that same thirst for exploration, for innovation. They were content with a simpler life, focused on food and family.
So while their relatives were out there, conquering the world, or at least their corner of it, these twins were all about peace, love, and a nice leafy salad.
Precisely. The book suggests that this lineage eventually led to the simian tribes, the ancestors of modern-day apes and chimps. Meanwhile, the descendants of that first set of twins, they continued to evolve, eventually becoming the primates, the final crucial step before humans emerged. But that, my friend, is a story for the next part of our deep dive.
You're killing me with suspense. Don't miss the thrilling conclusion of our evolutionary adventure coming up next time. Welcome back. We're wrapping up our deep dive into the unique perspective on human origins found in the Urantia book.
We left off with quite a cliffhanger, the emergence of the primates, the last stage of evolution before humans appeared on the scene.
Right. And if memory serves, there was some serious family drama along the way. Two sets of extraordinary twins, each shaping the story in their own way.
Yes, fascinating, isn't it? How even subtle variations, even between twins, can result in completely different evolutionary pathways.
So let's talk about those primates. What set them apart? Were they hanging out in trees, contemplating the meaning of life?
Well, the Urantia book says they were actually quite different from the apes we see today. Taller, some over 5 feet, and with even less body hair than their predecessors. And here's a big one. They no longer had that grasping big toe.
No more picking things up with their feet.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad. But I guess it makes sense, right? They were becoming more adapted to life on the ground.
Exactly. Walking, running, they were incredibly good at it. And while they still used trees for safety when they needed to, their relationship with trees had changed. They climbed more like humans do, using their legs for power.
So less about swinging from branches and more about a quick escape route. I bet their brains were really evolving during this time, too.
Absolutely. The Urantia book suggests that using their hands more rather than their mouths or feet for tasks and exploration led to major brain development.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention. But in this case, it's more like dexterity is the mother of intelligence. So they're walking upright, they have increasingly skillful hands. What about their emotions? Were they starting to show those more human traits we talked about earlier?
It does seem they were on the verge of something remarkable. The Urantia book says they experienced a wide range of emotions: disgust, vanity, even a sense of shame.
Shame. Now that's an emotion with a lot of social baggage. Makes you wonder what kind of social structures they were forming.
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it? This developing self-awareness, this understanding of their place within a social group. It's a huge step towards what we'd recognize as human consciousness.
So we've got these intelligent primates walking upright on the edge of something big. What's next? This is where those first humans arrive, right?
Yes. After nearly a million years of this gradual evolution, the Urantia book describes the appearance of two very special individuals, the first true human beings.
Here we go, the moment we've been waiting for. What made them so unique? Do they just show up fully formed, ready to invent the wheel?
Well, it wasn't quite that instantaneous, but the Urantia book is clear about what set them apart. Their hands and feet were perfectly formed for walking and running, but more importantly, way more importantly, they had this remarkable emotional capacity.
So not just a physical change, but an emotional leap forward, too.
Exactly. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, love, the whole spectrum of human emotions. But the Urantia book highlights one in particular, a capacity for worship.
Worship. That seems like a big jump even for these highly evolved humans. What does that mean in this context?
It's about awe, a sense of something far greater than themselves. The Urantia book suggests this spiritual capacity, this ability to ponder life's big mysteries, was a defining characteristic of these first humans.
Like they were looking at the stars, not with just curiosity, but with wonder, with a feeling of connection to something beyond what they could understand.
Exactly, and this capacity for worship, for spiritual thought, goes hand in hand with their advanced intelligence.
Okay, so we've got emotions, we've got spirituality, but what about the how did the Urantia book explain their intelligence?
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The Urantia book connects the development of human intellect to 7 adjutant mind spirits. These mind spirits, think of them as forces, progressively shape the minds of creatures on Earth as they evolve.
So each mind spirit brings a specific cognitive upgrade, and as those upgrades accumulate, you get increasingly complex minds over generations.
A great way to put it. And here's a key detail. The Urantia book tells us that while the first 5 mind spirits were active in those earlier species, the final 2, the ones associated with worship and wisdom, only became fully active with the arrival of humans.
So it's the activation of those final 2, worship and wisdom, that really makes us human. It's what gives us that capacity for spiritual thought, deep wisdom, all those things that make us, well, us. This is incredible, but it gets even better, right? Because with these first humans on the scene, something pretty major happens on a cosmic scale.
You're talking about Urantia's formal recognition as a planet now inhabited by intelligent life.
Exactly. It's like Earth finally made it onto the intergalactic map. What can you tell us about this momentous occasion?
The Urantia book describes a transmission of sorts, a cosmic message, you could say, received shortly after those first humans appeared. It acknowledges Earth as a planet now home to intelligent life, a world worthy of attention from the wider universe.
It's amazing. Did this cosmic message include a welcome basket? Maybe some interstellar travel tips?
Not quite. The book stresses that while there's recognition, admiration even, there's also a huge amount of respect for our journey. The messages emphasize non-interference, letting humanity carve its own path.
No cheat codes, no shortcuts, just a cosmic thumbs up. You got this, humans. It really underscores that even though we're part of this vast universe, we're ultimately the ones writing our own story.
Precisely. And that's perhaps the most significant takeaway from the Urantia book's perspective on where we came from. Yes, forces beyond our understanding shape our journey, but our choices, our collective will, that's what will determine the course of human evolution.
It's both empowering and humbling, isn't it? We're part of something so much bigger, yet we have this power to shape our own future.
It certainly gives you something to think about.
Well, listeners, there you have it. A glimpse into the epic, unconventional tale of how we got here, as told by the Urantia book. From those ancient lemurs in Mesopotamia to the very first human beings. If you're looking for a new perspective on our place in the cosmos, the Urantia book is a fascinating read for sure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.